What's happening, guys? Anthony here with the Silver Screen Analysis, bringing you another great couple of reviews, and we have a special guest joining in today.
Hey, how's it going, guys? My name is Mike. I run a channel called Married Movie Reviews with my wife, Karen. We do a lot of trailer breakdowns and movie reviews together. I do a lot of movie reviews on my own, and I just want to thank Anthony for having me on his channel.
Today we're just going to be diving right into Spider-Man, so let's just get right into it. This is going to be spoiler-filled, so if you haven't seen this movie after all these years, you have been warned. We're definitely going to be revealing some plot lines and some dynamics that you may not want to hear about if you haven't seen it. So I thought this was a great film. It was directed by Sam Raimi, who had Tobey Maguire, Kirsten Dunst, James Franco, Willem Dafoe, J.K. Simmons. The cast was solid, and it was your basic origin story. You have Peter Parker. He's an awkward high school student. He kind of has a crush or a love for the girl next door, Mary Jane, that's with the jock of the school, and it's that typical dynamic that we all know for Spider-Man. But at the same time, the story also develops Norman Osborn, how he basically is a scientist working on some government projects, and to keep it short, he gets ousted from his company. And at the same time as Peter Parker is kind of coming into his own after being bit by a spider, Willem Dafoe's character of Norman Osborn is kind of descending more into madness as he divides a split personality and becomes the Green Goblin and eventually crosses paths with Spider-Man. So that's basically what this story was. Mike, what did you think about it? How did you think they did the origin story? Did they do it justice for you?
Oh yeah, this movie I think is one of the best origin stories for a superhero. Granted, it was one of the first major films to give us a good origin story, so it's kind of hard to beat the original. What I like best about it is we just kind of jump right into it. I mean, about 5 minutes in, Peter Parker's already getting bit by the spider, and he's basically becoming Spider-Man at that point. And not too long after that, we get the origin of the Green Goblin. And, the action is well placed in this movie. There's a lot of good character development in this movie, and it's one of the best comic book movies in my opinion, because this one really put Marvel on the map in terms of, yes, X-Men came first, but this one, I feel like it was the pinnacle, just that shot Marvel into just infamy. And yeah, now we have all the Avengers movies because of it, in my opinion. That's how I see it.
Completely agree with you there. I think this movie really just showed itself as being that, as comic book movies can be entertaining films for the masses, and they're well made, and there's a lot of thought put into them because, like you said, I think the story was extremely well structured. It had a lot of different dynamics that it wove together very well. It really builds up Willem Dafoe and Peter Parker both throughout the film. It builds them extremely well. So once they finally meet up in the third act, it's just as climactic as it should be, and it really weaves that Harry and Peter's dynamic, as well as Peter and Mary Jane. It weaves all those in very well. It doesn't really seem, everything is very smooth, and it like you said, it develops the characters. It makes the most impact out of scenarios. And like I said, Willem Dafoe, I think, is one of the best comic book villains that we've ever seen in a film. I think it's often forgotten that he's in this movie. His costume's not the best, but I mean, hey, he makes the moments work. He really builds that true antagonist. He makes the most out of the writing. So that really just takes us into the performances. What stood out for you? Who did it for you? Who did you not like in this film? And what's your overall thoughts?
Oh, well, like you said, Willem Dafoe did such a great job in this movie, playing that split personality. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Gollum from the Lord of the Rings movies, and he does it really well because Willem Dafoe, he's kind of a creepy looking guy, but he can also be kind of charming at the same time when he's playing Norman Osborn. Tobey Maguire was a really good Peter Parker. I'm not so sure if he was a good Spider-Man, but he was still passable. I did like how he was more muscular in the suit than what we'll get into later, or the next video with Andrew Garfield. But Kirsten Dunst, she was a little bit miscast for me. She was just okay. I definitely did not like Aunt May in this movie. She got a little annoying, especially at the part where the Green Goblin blows up her house and she was in the middle of her prayer. And then she goes to the hospital and she's talking about those yellow eyes. It was for the most part, it was good for the casting. James Franco, it was hit or miss with him, depending on the scene. But I did really buy into the friendship between Peter Parker and Harry, so they pulled that off pretty well.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the performances were pretty good overall. I didn't have major issues with Kirsten Dunst as Mary Jane. I think it was because luckily the story, it developed their relationship very quickly. It didn't slow the film down, so her scenes were serviceable. They weren't memorable at all. Like, just, I thought Tobey Maguire did a fantastic job. Like you said, he was extremely good Peter Parker. And at first, like, going back and all the years pass and you see, Spider-Man 3 and everything that happened to that, and you kind of like, Tobey Maguire was okay. It's like you go back and watch this film and you're like, he was pretty fantastic as this character, and he did a great job. And Willem Dafoe was fantastic. I think he did deliver the best performance of the movie. I think he really carried the entertainment along. I wish almost it was, I really enjoyed the Peter Parker storyline, and it was very well developed, but Willem Dafoe left me wanting more. And I also thought J.K. Simmons was fantastic. He had some memorable moments as well, and I think the performances were just great overall, and it really blended in with the story to kind of give everything a lot of substance. What did you think of the special effects and the action sequences?
Well, some of the special effects are really good. They were really good for the time. Some of them don't age well. In particular, that scene when right after Uncle Ben dies and he's running through that alley and he's putting on his like his Mark I suit, if you will, which it's just like the ski mask. When he's climbing up that wall, some of it was just, even back then, I didn't think it was very believable. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the Catwoman special effects, but. I mean, the Green Goblin, when he's flying around on that the glider, that was really good. And all the swinging with Spider-Man, when it's more of a wide shot, looks just fantastic. And I hope that they even just up the ante with this new Spider-Man Homecoming.
Absolutely agree with you. I definitely think that the special effects were dated, but they kind of hold a little bit of a nostalgia for me. This was a very colorful, vibrant film, and it really reminds me kind of the first Superman movie from 1977, 78. I hope I have that year right. But yeah, it has a nostalgic feel to it, and yeah, it's definitely dated. I really enjoyed some of the web slinging at the time, but there was some, it's definitely made its advances. I think you can still enjoy it, but I think the third act fight really holds up. I thought it was well shot, and I thought that it was actually pretty violent, and I really thought that the action sequences and that whole third act with him and Green Goblin going at it were pretty well done. But it's dated, but I definitely I can see some enjoyment in it still. They still kind of just hold that comic book feel. So what were your overall thoughts on this movie? Anything that you didn't like? What really stand out for you? Any specific scenes or anything?
Well, specific scenes, I would have to say the first scene when he's trying to get his webs to come out. I remember really liking that scene for some reason, when he's just trying to figure out like what hand movement to do to get his organic web to come out. All the scenes with J.K. Simmons, I mean, he pretty much defined that role. He embodied that character from the comics. Overall, this movie is it's really fun. It's definitely comic book feeling, and that's what makes it so great, is it didn't try to take itself too seriously, but it didn't try to be too silly. And they married those two ideas just so flawlessly that it was like the first great comic book movie. I mean, well, I guess X-Men was, but this one after that was, really good.
I totally agree with you. I think this was a fun film to go back and watch. It still holds a lot of that just comic book vibe. It's very nostalgic, and it kind of has these moments where it dips into kind of darker scenes, and then it kind of lightens the mood, and then it gets darker again, because I thought the third act was pretty violent, and it was very well shot, and it was kind of unrelenting at times. So even though it's that stark contrast, I think, like you said, everything really just dives into a nice flow of everything. And honestly, if I was to think of any drawbacks to this one, I guess, like you could say, Kirsten Dunst wasn't the best. I think she definitely was worse in other films that were to come later as the relationship really just bogged down and got repetitive. But for this one, I think in short doses, she kind of does all right. But the main drawback, I think, was the Green Goblin costume. It was a little cartoonish. And I think even at the time, I thought they could have probably done something a little bit better than that. But as it stands, I still had a great time going back and watching this one. I was surprised at how engaging it was. And what's your final grade?
For this movie, I'd have to grade it an A minus. I mean, it was pretty close to being an A because it's just such a fun movie. But there are some parts in it that just don't really work for me. Like I said, the Aunt May prayer scene when she's in the hospital. And also the fact that during the final fight scene, while it's great, I just wish that his Spider-Man's mask had just stayed intact because it would have looked so much cooler if it was just his mask being on the whole time. But I know that's a thing to do with like the actors and their contract, and they have to show their face for a certain amount of time. But yeah.
I would agree with you. It was close to a perfect comic book movie. It was a fantastic film, and overall, I'd have to say I'd give it like a 95%. I mean, I really only had a couple drawbacks to it. I even think some of the cheesy moments kind of work for that nostalgia feel. Like I said, it kind of reminds me of the first Superman movie with Christopher Reeves back in the day, where some of the dialogue is a little cheesy and some of the stuff kind of just makes you roll your eyes, but none of it's really cringeworthy. It's all kind of fun and it's just lighthearted, and I really enjoyed it. So that's our review, guys. That's our thoughts on Spider-Man. Mike, go ahead and let them know one more time where they can find you on YouTube, Twitter, and wherever else you're at.
Well, you guys can find me on YouTube at Married Movie Reviews. You can type in youtube.com/Married Movie Reviews, or you can find us on Twitter at Married Review. Me and my wife do movie reviews. I do trailer breakdowns. And yeah, this was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me, Anthony.
Yeah, I had a great time. I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation on Spider-Man. Leave us some comments. Let us know what you thought of this film, what memories stick out for you of it, what didn't you like about it, and what did you think in comparison to the Tobey Maguire compared to Andrew Garfield. That's what we're going to be getting into. Definitely check out Married Movie Reviews. We're going to be talking about Amazing Spider-Man over there. And yeah, thanks again for joining me, Mike, and thanks for joining us, guys. It was a great time. Thanks so much for watching. As always, I'm Anthony. This is the Silver Screen Analysis, and I'll see you guys at the movies.